Hey everyone, John here from All Miniatures Great and Small, and today I have a special guest.
Hello.
It's Jake. Alright, so today we are just going to have a little talk about Jake's LVO experience.
Yeah.
If you don't know what LVO is, it's the Las Vegas Open.
Mm-hmm.
Approximately how many people attended the Las Vegas Open?
Oh, like total?
Yeah.
With all? I don't know. It was a lot though.
Many thousand. It's a huge gaming convention.
The 40K Grand Tournament Championship, which is what I was a part of, I think was like something like 800, somewhere around there. So one giant huge hall, and then they have slightly less huge halls all around for the different game types and whatnot.
So basically, part of the AmGas crew went to LVO. You, Jacob, and Sam.
Yeah, everyone that has been featured here.
And me and Mark, we didn't go.
Yep, you guys stayed behind.
So we stayed behind. I do eventually want to go to LVO and participate in the Flames of War tournaments that are there. I think they run nationals there too, but I don't know. I think there's plenty of fun games I think I would like to play or just wander the hall. But
there's a lot to do.
there is. That's beside the point. In today's video, we're just going to talk, and I'm going to ask Jake about his LVO experience and what he did, what he took, and what happened.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start with the road to LVO. Well, it's kind of obvious what you took, but you want to go over, just real quick, your thought process as far as what army you chose?
Yeah, so it's different this time than any other event or tournament I've ever gone to before, because I built and painted this army about 5 weeks before LVO happened, which was the fastest I've ever done it. I painted many hours, though, to make it look nice. But yeah, basically my thought process was I was reading the meta. I hadn't actually played really any 9th edition. Like, you and I played one, but then that was really it. And that was kind of when it came out. And then we hadn't really played because we were just playing Flames of War and all sorts of other games. So I hadn't really played. I didn't really know the rules. So I watched enough videos. I looked online and I saw some competitive Sisters lists and then kind of thought what I wanted to do, and I just kind of merged the two. So that's why I have a mainly infantry Sisters of Battle list. And I guess I can just jump into the list then. But basically I did 2 different detachments. Bloody Rose and Argent Shroud. They're 2 very popular ones. Bloody Rose gives you minus or +1 to your AP when you charge or are charged or heroic intervene, and then the same thing happens, but for you get an additional attack. So Bloody Rose is very close combat oriented. So basically everybody with close combat weapons was a part of Bloody Rose. And then everyone with guns, which was Argent Shroud, you get to move in advance and fire as if you're stationary, which is fantastic because I have lots of Retributors. And then the other part of that is you can reroll 1 hit or 1 wound, but not both.
Like the Salamanders.
I think they do both, but yeah, similar to that.
So, and it's interesting, this will be one of the last major tournaments where doing that is legal because they've changed that. In the latest errata, you have to be all one faction within your force. Which
I was looking, and I'm forgetting the name of the guy who did so well with his sisters, because I think they were like 28th from the top by it was all said and done. But he was taking Valorous Heart, which I think is going to become the new popular, since you can only do 1 detachment, and that one is you ignore AP -1 or -2, but you subtract 1 from it. So 2 becomes 1, 1 becomes 0.
Now, is that just for troops? Or just for core?
I think it's just for like your infantry. Yeah. So it still covers everybody. I don't think it's for tanks.
Okay.
But yeah, that's the Sisters. The reason I built my list mainly an infantry army is because the Sisters tanks kind of stink. They're just very overpriced for what you get, and they're very easy to blow up because everything is on a Rhino chassis, and yeah, they're just a lot of points. So that's why I only took 2 Rhinos, and honestly, I only took them because if I didn't get first turn, my Retributors hopefully could live longer because they're hiding inside each Rhino with Dominions. So yeah, that's kind of the process behind my list. So as far as everything in my list, in Bloody Rose we have my Sacrosanct. We have Celestine, I think, leading the detachment, but she doesn't gain any benefits from it. We have all of my jump troops, so that's 2 units of Seraphim, or no, not all of you might jump troops, sorry.
These lovely guys.
Yeah, two units of Seraphim, so all my close combat ones, making sure they get nice, tasty extra attacks and whatnot. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I think I also had like one character in there in that detachment, so really not much at all. I just wanted the bonuses for it. And then everything else is in Argent Shroud, because that was my battalion and it fit. So yeah, that was basically my thinking. Yeah, I knew what units were good, and so I kind of took those. Everyone who's really competitive with Sisters is taking 2 units of Sacrosanct, if not 3 units of Sacrosanct. And I didn't want to own 30 Sacrosancts, because I think that's silly. So I only had 1 unit of 10.
It's hard to chase the meta if you're not willing to be silly.
Yeah, yeah. It was just like, I know as soon as it goes out of style, 1 unit of 10 will be fine. And I think it's more fun to play against. That was kind of different. So 2 years ago, if you watched that video, I took Eldar, and it was only like 15 models, and it was mainly tanks. And that list was great and bad for LVO. 1, because it wasn't very interactive. I just kind of blew my opponents away for most lists. But 2, on the good side of that, is less models, because this was a lot of models to play at LVO. I don't think I would play with this many models again at a tournament like that.
It's a lot of pressure to move all that stuff.
It's a lot of pressure. I don't think I ever timed out, but yeah, it's just, you get exhausted. Like, you're really, each guy, and like my guys are pretty fragile because I worked hard on my marble basing, and I didn't pin any of my guys. So I had to really pick up everybody by the base. And yeah, it was just a little bit of a nightmare. But
all right, well, so you, Jacob, and Sam all drove to Las Vegas from here. We're in Arizona.
Yes, we did.
So it's not that far of a drive.
No, it was only like 4.5 hours or so.
So LVO, at least unless you get into the finals, you play 6 rounds, right? Unless you make it into the top.
There could be a shadow like 7th round, because like 2 years ago we did have to do that on day 1, so we played 4 games on day 1, which was kind of brutal. But this time we didn't have to, thankfully. And I think even if they said that, the 3 of us would have been like, we're going to bed, because we were all exhausted and dying by then.
All right, so let's talk about day 1 and your first battle. Who was your opponent?
My opponent. Oh goodness, I didn't think you were gonna ask the tough questions.
Well, what they play? If you don't remember their name.
Yeah, I don't have their names up, but I played Eldar. I played against witches. I was familiar with Eldar, so I was like, oh, okay. So I knew exactly what he was doing. But basically, in his list, he was very psychic heavy. And so as soon as I saw his list, it was the only game I actually switched my Sacred Rites ability in my whole army. So normally my whole army for Sacred Rites, I always pick 6s explode and give me 1 additional attack. And everybody has that, which is really cool. But since I was facing a psychic army with lots of psychic abilities, Sisters deny psychic powers just on a 6-up, which is a very cool ability. But you get a +1 to that. So I was denying on a 5-up. Now, unfortunately, throughout that whole game, I only denied 2 psychic powers total, and he must have casted near 50+.
Ooh.
Like, I rolled so poorly on defending that. But it was pretty good. It wasn't the most competitive Craft World build ever, because they're in a really bad spot as of LVO, but the new book's coming out, so that's exciting. But they're just pretty terrible now. So yeah, he ran like 2 Farseers and then a Warlock Conclave of 6 guys on bikes. So all of his psychic might was in one little biker gang, basically, and hiding from me most of the game. I would say one big thing is not barely playing any 9th edition before jumping into this. I had 2 practice games before LVO. So this is my 3rd game ever with this army and in 9th edition. And
the first time ever when it was fully painted.
Yeah, exactly. So the painting syndrome, first time thing. Well, that came into effect. But one big thing of LVO did for their tournaments is player placed terrain, which is a big part of it, and that's where a lot of strategy goes into. And I just wasn't really good at it yet. I'd say the whole tournament, I'd have a much better grasp on it now, but I'd say that probably screwed me more games than anything else, was not placing my terrain to help my army as much as it could.
All right, so let me ask you this. What was one thing you learned about your army that you didn't know before going into this battle? Any lessons?
That one, I'm not 100% sure. Probably, it was probably terrain I learned the most about. So not necessarily army, but...
No, that's good.
Yeah, placing terrain to my advantage. Because against Eldar, where they want to hide against everything, I should have opened everything up. On my end, at least.
Yeah.
I can't control his side. But I should have opened it up more. But yeah, that was probably my biggest fail on this one. And I had some minor like shooting things because at this point I'm still learning my army and what it does. I remembered all the phases because I made a huge cheat sheet the night before, which was good, and all my little powers. But yeah, I'd say getting used to the army was probably the biggest part of this whole experience.
All right, so game 1, defeat, narrow defeat.
Yes.
All right, let's go to game 2.
Yes. Oh, and here we go. I have my... Getting up my list. So I played Matt. That was round 1. Matt Schumann.
So shout out to Matt Schumann.
Yes, thank you for the game. It was very awesome. Super nice. We did play on a clock, and that was just for fun, but he was very nice, and he's like, if we go over, no worries, we'll keep going or whatever. Yeah, so he was very chill about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so game 2 was against Ian. Now, Ian had... Let me slide over here. Oh, yes. This was the game I got horribly crushed. So
Spoiler.
I played against the Custodes. So the book that came out like a week and a half before LVO.
Mm-hmm.
I actually listened to a whole podcast about this book because it was them and Gene Circle I didn't really know anything about. And Custodes, I think, really changed more than kind of Gene Circle did. And so I listened to them instead of Gene Circle. And I gambled correctly because I never played Gene Circle. But it didn't help. So I went second. So I get to always pregame move my rhinos. And I pushed them up into the buildings that you'll see that are closest to me so I could try to hide. But the Custodes have a stratagem where they can redeploy like 3 units. And so I couldn't hide from his bikes at all. And they had giant missile launchers on them. I think they do like 3 plus D3 damage, which is really good. So 1 unit shoots at you. He's going to hit you with everything. He's going to wound you with everything. I only have a 6-up invuln, so I failed them all. And then he just blew them up pretty easily. But they're so strong. Like they had, I think by the end of the LVO, they have over a 60% win rate, which is where Iron Hands were like 2 years ago. So I think they're a little bit too much.
The heady days of 8th edition?
Yes.
All right, exactly. So what'd you learn about your army in that second battle?
Oh, I learned we were very, very weak. Toughness 3 is super weak. Against Eldar, they were toughness 3 too, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But yeah, against Custodes, who were all toughness 5.
Well, they have a lot of strength 6 weapons too.
A lot of strength 6, like all those spears are strength 6 or higher.
You're wounded on 2+.
Yeah, so like he was just, right, Custodes hit and wound normally pretty much any time. Or like when they do snag up, it's the wound part. Yeah. But since it's me, they don't snag up on that at all. And then I can't stop, I don't have an armor save against them, except my 6-up, which is next to nothing, honestly, in hindsight. But yeah, he got rid of, the Allurus Terminators are the worst things ever, though. And this is, a lot of people are talking about the Allurus Terminators because they went down 5 points a week later after their book came out, but they're like an incredibly good unit already. And like, I was listening to the podcast, and I think it was the Art of War podcast, and they said like, even if these Terminators were like 10 points up, I would still buy them auto intake. So they went down 5 points, which is silly. I don't know what they were doing there. But yeah, they dropped down. There was like 7 of them dropped down and just annihilated like all of my Sacrosants with their missile or grenade launchers. And yeah, I just couldn't do anything. I rolled kind of badly on my invulnerable saves, but even then he just like shredded me. And then all of my bodyguards were gone for my characters because I had them up on that objective that you'll see in the photo. And so he shoots, like he has 1 missile left on a bike. And so he shoots it and he hits Morven Val and does like 4 damage to him right up to, like right at the end of his turn. So it was like this was just icing on the cake. He killed like 3 units, all the Sacrosants, and then shoots Morven Val and like brings her to half.
Oh.
And so I was like, oh, this is just horrible. I just got like absolutely crushed. I think he got like, he got 100 points, which is your max, and I got like 40 or 50 something.
Ooh.
It was bad.
All right, that's game 2, so another defeat.
Yeah, and I think at the same time, Jake and Sam were both losing both of their games too, so we were all just like being crushed. But my army takes so long to like pack up and stuff that they would finish their games and then they would go buy themselves like a treat across the to the other room. So they kept coming up to me at the end of my games with like, look what we just bought, like all this stuff.
That sounds like fun.
Which is pretty funny.
All right, let's go to game 3. So this would be the end of day 1.
Yeah, end of day 1. So we're all pretty tired. The end of day 1 is always the hardest, I think, for everybody there because you just traveled. Everybody just got there. And I was playing against Tau, which I was like, yes, because Tau suck. They're just not very good.
Well, till their new book comes out.
I just saw the preview for their new book, and it looks amazing. But here, they suck. The list I was against wasn't very good. Joseph, I believe that is your name. It wasn't very good against my list. I did go second, and you'll see in the photo, I kind of made a lineup for one objective on the right, one rhino on the left. I wanted to kill those ghost kills because they have fusion, and basically the highest AP that can actually hurt me. And when my sisters stand in terrain, they're getting like a 2-up save, which is cool. I'm still toughness 3, but I knew he has a lot of stealth suits with burst cannons on the objectives already on his turn because pre-game they get to do that. But I was like strength 5 shooting at me when I'm like, I don't care that he wounds me easily, but he has no AP. So I want to kill all the fusion. So I knew Tau well enough, so I knew all their saves and stuff, so I just cut through them. Like, I have power swords and so much AP -4 in this army from whether it's swords, halberds, or multi-meltas.
Yeah.
And Tau just don't really have the saves to compete at all, and so I pretty much just crushed them. I think by the end of the game I lost maybe 12 models or so, which is weird for sisters because you normally lose at least half of your army, even if you're doing well winning.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that one was kind of blowout. Not super interesting, not super fun, only because it was basically like he got to go shoot at me, and then I just did my turn, and it was over.
All right, so 2-1 after the end of day 1.
Yeah. So 2-1. So we've already done worse than last year. I guess we're tied for 2 years ago. Yeah, because 2 years ago I went 4-2, and yeah, so far I'm 2-1 or 1-2.
Yeah.
And then we'll go on to day 2 of LVO.
All right. So day 1 is done.
Yeah. So we're back for day 2.
Now we're back into day 2.
Yeah.
All right. So early in the morning, who was your first victim?
So my first victim was, drum roll please, was a no-show.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a no-show. I was waiting. You wait 15 minutes before you go. But there was this guy across the next tables over from me, and he also had a no-show. We were just looking at each other's armies, and his Ultramarines were painted really nicely. You'll see some cool photos of them pop up. And he was really liking my sisters, and I was like, oh, well, let's just go get repaired. And they're really chill about repairing, like as long as you have the same win rate, which if you're in the same like row of giant tables, odds are you have the same win rate. So we were, and so we just went and got paired up. Super nice guy. The only downside is we did start half an hour late, because we had to go through that whole process of getting repaired, and they don't really care that you started half an hour late. Is what I've.
Well, I gotta say too, you texted me and you're like, I'm playing Ultramarines, and I was very torn with my loyalties. Like, should I wish him good luck this round? I don't know.
But yeah, it was cool, and I do a fair amount about the Ultramarines. So I was like, I mean, I hadn't played them in 9th edition, so I was like, it changed a bit, but I still knew like the stats of Marines and stuff like that. So that wasn't bad. But basically, we never got to really finish this game. We got like just to the climax of it, and then had to kind of talk it through, which is no longer really a thing.
Not a thing in tournaments.
In our situation, it was just we kind of had to, just because we like that other half an hour we could have finished our game, but yeah, we just. Yeah, unfortunately we just ran out of time. But super great guy, Danny. So I played against Danny.
I already like him.
Very nicely painted Ultramarines, yeah.
I saw the pictures. They look really good.
Yeah, they looked awesome. So that's honestly, that's the best part of going to tournaments, is you get matched up with someone who just painted their army really nice. I don't care how competitive it is. It can be the best thing ever, the worst thing ever. As long as your paint gets a nice army, like it makes the game way more enjoyable. For me.
Yeah, that's true for any game, but
yeah. But his list was pretty good. I know Ultramarines are not on like the top of the scene at all or anything, or Space Marines in general just really aren't on the top at all. But this Ultramarine list was pretty good, and probably the main way I would see running them for competitive.
I'm on a couple of Ultramarine Facebook pages.
Yeah.
And if the people there are to be believed, the highest Ultramarine player was 110th place.
Oh.
Which is pretty
low.
Interesting,
yeah.
But it may be your guy, because they said he had a weird list with Gilliman.
Oh, it might be. I never looked at all of the standings.
Maybe there was others, but who knows? But I don't know if that's true or not. Correct me if you guys know more down below, but I heard that rumor anyway. All right, let's go to your 5th game.
Yeah, my 5th game was against Space Wolves, which was like my first army.
You also collect... No, for your first army was the Tiger Lords.
Yeah, but they were based off of Space Wolves. Yeah. But yeah, so
when he was 8.
Yeah, it's a pretty ugly army. Orange. Ugh. But yeah, so we had the Space Wolves. There were a lot of dreadnoughts. There was like 3 Redemptors, the big pyramid. Yeah, so 3 Redemptors and Bjorn leading them, which is hilarious because yeah, the Redemptors are like this big and Bjorn is like a third of their size, and so the army just looked very silly. But he had like 4 units of 5 veterans with a Storm Shield and a Lightning Claw, which these units are ridiculous for Space Wolves because they can like move and advance, 4 up invuln, 2 up armor, like 2 wounds apiece. They were near unkillable in my entire game. So I obviously didn't get to go first, which was a shame. Our game actually ended up being really close too. It was something like 63 to 67, so it was within 5 points. If I knew what I was doing, I think I would have won the game because Space Wolves aren't very competitive, just as a whole in general. But there were so many things I didn't know, and I wasted like all of my jump troops trying to fight veterans, and I maybe killed like 2 of them out of 20 of them.
Ooh.
Like using all of these guys, and then like 2 squads of sisters died to them, and it was bad. It was so bad. But yeah, it was still a fun game. Morven Val I told him all of the rules at the beginning, but I think he forgot this one. But he tried to move block Morven Val and made 2 ranks, one of Scouts, one of Primaris. And I needed my Defend the Sanctuary objective that they were sitting on. So he did that. Morven Val moved up. She swept all the Scouts with her sweeping attack. And then once per game, she gets to fight twice. So I consolidated into the next guys, and then I fought the Primaris, and then I just swept up the 5 Primaris Marines. So that was kind of her highlight, and then she took the objective for the rest of the game. Cool. Which was pretty cool. That was like the one time Morven Val actually worked. But yeah, so it's still really fun. Yeah, good game. Interesting Space Wolf list. Hopefully they get some definite buffs coming their way soon, because that's like the list for them, I think, is really their only option. But yeah, so other than that, that was a good one, and now we're on to the final game.
Final round, okay.
Yeah. This one was also one of my favorites. This one's kind of tied for the Ultramarine one. So, it's a Knight player. Really, really awesome, nice guy. He had beautifully painted Knights. This was probably one of the best Knight painted armies that were even there. So I was so excited to play them. But you know, like when you see a list, you're immediately like, oh, I can take that. Like, no questions asked. That was kind of like playing against Knights. It was a very basic Knight list. They were House Crast. 3 big Knights, Crusader, Gallant, and Warden, I think. Or I don't know what that other one is. But Thermal Cannon and Chainsaw Hand. And then he had 2 Helverins and 2 Armigers with the Melted Lance. And so, right, they're just... Knights are much better now with all the buffs, but Chaos Knights is really where it's at. And these were Imperium. I knew that pretty well because I also used to have Imperial Knights. Yeah, so I knew exactly what they could do. I missed out. I was like, if I was going first, I was like, oh, this is going to be in trouble. Like, I'm going to melt the crap out of these guys. He went first. But yeah, so the game went on. It was definitely more fun than I thought it was going to be. And he was such a nice player. I didn't want to just crush his Knight army. And thankfully, he went first, so that didn't happen. But he was whittling down my Sacrosanct. So I was slowly running out of cover. So Morven Val is as close as I could get to a Knight to fight it. So I killed all of his little guys, and he throws up a big Knight right in the middle. And I knew that was coming at some point, and I had my Canoness waiting. And my Canoness has Word of the Emperor, which for 40 points, once per game I get to use Miracle Die, and it turns off Invulns. And then her other side of that, which just happens all the time, is anybody within 3 inches of her fights last. So a really awesome little unit to have. Never really got to use that power until this game, actually. But she ran up to him by herself, turns off the invuln of that Knight, and then I had my Retributors right there, shot 4 multi-meltas into him, did like 27 damage to him. Like I was rolling hot on the damage dice. Morven Val, I think, gave them full rerolls too. So it was brutal. That Knight went down hard. But yeah, so after that, there was the second Knight was over in the corner, and he had something like 19 wounds left, or 20. And so I was like, okay, I'll send Morven Val, I'll send Celestine, and like my whatever Sacrosancts are left. And they together they just killed it. Morven Val did like 15 wounds to a Knight, which was pretty awesome. Her spear is strength 8, and her warlord trait is she rerolls all hits and wounds in combat, which you don't really get to use a whole lot of unless you get to combat, obviously. So that was nice. So yeah, we just annihilate that knight. And then I think the very last guy that was left was a gallant. And so he just moves him to the middle of the table. I'm literally like surrounding him with all of my units. And we just run in, charge. And he, it was very strange though. One thing he did, I was like, I'm going to shoot a ton of Molten Melt at you before I charge in. He was like, do you want to use your rotate ion shields? He's like, no, I'll save it for like combat. And I was like, you're probably not going to make it to combat. It's like, are you sure you don't want to? He's like, no, I won't use it. And so I actually ended up blowing him up, shooting him. But then I was like, oh, but you do have that stratagem, because he only 1 CP left. You do have that stratagem to blow up on a 4+. So it's like, that's not bad since everybody's here. And he took Assassinate. And my Gemini are the easiest Assassinate points ever. And so they're there. And so, but he rolled a 6 right off the bat. Like, just explodes this knight. Hits like all of my units, and we didn't roll all of them, but I probably would have lost like 20 guys, which is hilarious.
Which is good.
Yeah, so I just imagined like the sisters are like, oh, charge,
like, just all get knocked over.
Yeah, exactly. And so he ends up killing a Gemini, which gave him some more points, which is good. But I still won. It was pretty much a landslide, even though he killed probably 2/3 of my army. But we ended the game, I think, with it's like 97-28. So points wise, it was not good looking at it. But like in the game, it was way more fun, and
yeah,
it was more tactical than it looked to me.
It sounds like you could control the objective game if he's hiding it.
Yeah, and I just had to stay away from the knights because he just didn't have enough. There wasn't enough bodies, and which is why competitive knights take a lot of armigers, just because you need more bodies around. And like when I jumped in my troops, I knew they were going to be safe getting Retrieve Octarius data, because why would he come back for 5 guys when he's fighting the rest of my army? Yeah. So that's kind of their biggest problem. But yeah, he still killed easily. It was like everything except 1 unit of Retributors and all of my characters. And yeah, that was pretty much. And then guys in the corner getting data. But
so overall, you had a 2-4 record.
2-4, yep. So the exact opposite of last time I went to LVO.
But considering you didn't know your army that well,
not terrible.
Yeah.
And I had 3 of the games were really close. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it wasn't bad. If I knew my secondaries better, because I was picking different secondaries every game. If I knew what I was doing, I think I probably would have won those games. But if I would have won them, that would have changed the trajectory for all the other games. So it's kind of hard to say.
Yeah, and I know you feel the same way I do. Losing to someone who's fun to play with really is not that big.
Oh yeah, I'd rather lose to someone fun to play with than win against someone who wasn't fun to play with, right? Like, it's definitely not all about, I do like to win and be competitive, but at the same time, it's more about fun because we're playing with tiny plastic toys. You can only take this so seriously, I feel like.
Some do.
Yeah, but overall, it was really fun. I learned a lot about my army overall. It dies to a stiff breeze, right? You have the armor of Marines, but not the toughness of a Marine. So yeah, I just got killed so quickly. Most games, it was just pulling models off like crazy. Yeah. And I get why one of the guys took Valorous Heart, which gives you that armor, because you desperately need it. I'm a 2-up when I'm in cover, which was often, but they have just enough minus, and wounding you with everything, you just can't, even if you roll average, you're gonna die.
Yeah. Well, that's the current state of the game. It's very, very killy.
Yeah. One thing really good about my list, though, that I realized throughout the games is a lot of people take tons of multiple damage weapons, which is kind of a waste against me, because the only things that are multiple damage are the 2 rhinos and my characters. Everybody else is 1 wound. So it'd be really funny, because guys would be like, oh, that's 2 wounds on each, and I got 10 on hits on the Sacrosanct or whatever, and I was like, okay, it's still 1 guy. Yeah. So that was nice. A lot of games, what I would do, because it was pretty tactical, was I would just go for all of their anti-infantry assets, because typically they had less of those than they did anti-tank. So I would aim for those first, and then they would just shoot las cannons into me instead, and I wouldn't care about that as much. Yeah. So that's kind of the way to play this list. But yeah, overall, I wish I went first more. I think
So you only went first once out of 6 games?
And that's the one game it didn't matter that I went first, because I didn't kill a single model. Yeah, so it's a little silly. But yeah, overall, I think this is a very good Sisters list. It's a fun one, because no matter if you win or lose, you're going to lose a lot of models. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of nice for your opponent, because if your opponent never loses a single model, that's not fun.
That's true.
And even if when I was winning, I was losing 75% of the army still, because, my main people are Celestine and Morvenn Vahl. But yeah, overall, really cool. I think what I would add to this list to make it more competitive. And now with the new rules, I would definitely go the Valorous Heart route. I don't know if I need all of these jump troops. I might switch them out. I finally got Crusaders in. That's what I wanted to take into my list because it's 11 points for a toughness 3, 4-up invuln dude. And they're great at just running out and getting data.
Dudette?
Nope, just dudes.
Oh,
Crusaders are only men.
They're men?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they're like part of the Inquisition. Because there's a lot of Inquisition stuff in my book too. But yeah, so I'd probably switch them out because they're cheap and they can hold on to an objective in your backfield, so I can move up everybody else. And other than that, yeah, rhinos are kind of pricey. I have the most expensive rhinos in any of the Space Marine related armies at 80 points, and so it's like I could get a whole unit for 80 points. So it's kind of hard to justify the rhino. Like he's doing a good job at keeping guys safe. Depends on how many ones I roll. But also you can spend like some CP to put Retributors in reserve so they can come on the board edge instead, and then they're just as dangerous. So I'm kind of torn between just kind of keeping the rhinos in the list or not. I think I have to toy around with it.
Well, you got enough to try either way.
Yeah, exactly. And I have one more rhino, so I could build up and paint one more and try more rhinos. Maybe that's what I need. Or
Maybe
I do want to add an Exorcist, which is the death organ.
Well, that's the thing too. The meta is changing so fast.
Yeah.
Games Workshop not slowing down that you're not going to chase the meta, so build what's fun.
Well, and I have so many Sisters models, I can kind of just build everything, and then whatever changes, I can be like, oh, I can take you now. Or, oh, I'm not going to buy 30 Sacrosands. That's dumb. And they also just went up in points a bunch, so that list is probably not even working anymore. Yeah, because I forget how many points they went up, but it's worth it to take a unit of 10, but probably not a 30. And like Morven Val went up 15 points. For me, I still really like her in the army. I'd still take her because you need one model that can dish out some hurt. And so, yeah, between her and Celestine's okay. She's not nearly as hard-hitting as Morven Val is. So I'd probably always keep Morven Val. Celestine's a maybe. I don't know if I'm just as good with her. Like, she's still toughness 3, so she gets shot up like crazy.
It's just all the practice.
Exactly.
It's all practice.
But yeah, overall, I think my list was pretty good. If I knew it better, probably place a little bit better. But super fun overall. And it seems, Jake went 2 and 4 as well. And we looked at our standings, and we were at dinner, and it was funny, before the placings actually came through, I was like, Jake, I feel like we did roughly like very similar in our games and like new and stuff, and we looked at the listings, and I was the 501st placing, and he was 505th placing. So it's kind of funny.
You beat Jacob by 4.
By 4 placings, yeah. And I was like, oh, I wonder how many. I should have looked. I wonder how many points that was off. Probably not, barely any though.
And then our condolences to Sam, who just won one game.
Yeah, Sam got a little crushed, but yeah, we've already been talking about like next season and what we want to play. I'm leaning heavily towards Eldar. I know it's a year away to say, but Eldar just got all the pretty new models. Yeah, and their new book came out now, so that gives me enough time to figure out what they're good at before we get to LVO.
Yeah.
And I can take time painting, which is great.
And I'm sure there's plenty of cool more models that are going to be coming for Eldar too.
I hope
Plus you can combine them now, I'm hearing. You can combine the Eldar with the the Harlequins and all those. You can take
in Yannari you can. Yeah. But they're all in the same book, which is cool. So you only have to buy that one book, and you have all of the spices of Eldar. And I'm really excited. I'm probably going to be doing Aspect. I'm going to hit somewhere in between a competitive list and what I want to do. So I want to take like one each of the aspects. I think that'd be really cool. But yeah, so that's kind of my plans.
All right, I'll say one thing about Eldar that I hate.
What's that?
I hate when Eldar players have the stupid tank with the 2 forks in the front.
The
Falcon or
it's any tank with that chassis.
And they put the little character in between the forks so you can't get to it, and then they drive up against a wall or something. Or another tank, so the little guy is like totally been... I hate that. That drives me... I just want to punch something.
I don't even know, because I haven't played so long. Like, I don't know if that's still allowed. But I haven't heard that it's not allowed yet. The thing is, LR are so bad, like the tanks stink so bad. Like the Wave Serpent, I think was the first model with -1 damage, and everyone's like, oh, the Wave Serpent's so good and broken. You know how many things have -1 damage in the game now?
Yeah, well, that's Games Workshop. They made 2 killies, so now let's make everything -1 damage.
Yeah, so it's a little ridiculous. And that's kind of where what I think about the Custodes, like the spot that they're in. They're so killy and they're so tough.
Yeah, like, I'm sure they'll get hit by the with the Nerf hammer sooner rather than later.
I would hope so, because that was the one game. And yeah, Sam or Jacob didn't play against Custodes, and I'm like, you guys are lucky. 'Cause I feel like it would have just obliterated their lists as well. Like, it wasn't the most exciting of games.
All right, well, we're going to wrap it up here. We don't want this to go on for forever.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you sharing your LVO. I wish I could have gone along. Not to play 40K. I like playing 40K, but more socially than competitively.
Yeah.
So maybe on the channel we'll have Sisters versus the Ultramarines, and you can maybe get a second shot at redemption.
Yeah, you could take that guy's list or something very close to it, because I know you have most of those models, and that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I'm not sold on Gilman in 9th.
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard. You don't have many choices. It's like, what else are you going to fill that 400 points with?
So, I don't know. There could be. Okay, so there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please do consider giving us a like and subscribe. Click that bell to receive notification when we release new content. As always, thanks for watching, and keep on wargaming.
Bye.